Department of Arts and Science, Law Faculty of Law, Manipal University, Jaipur. In this second day of our executive director with us, we are having Dr. Parna Mukherjee. She is an associate professor in Institute of Law, Nirma University, Ahmedabad, and with very vast experience of 15 years and multiple publication in her account. We welcome you, ma'am, in this session. And today's topic is Introduction to Sustainability and Equality in Higher Education. So welcome you, ma'am. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to one and all present today. And at the outset, I would like to thank the collaborative organizing institution partnering together, that is the School of Law, Department of Law at Manipal University, Jaipur, and collaborating with Law Teachers India. So both, and I thank you for inviting and this opportunity. So thank you so much, and also for the brief introduction. As all of you know, we have been in academia. We are never experienced. It's never enough. So we keep evolving and learning and unlearning, relearning each day. And this is how we go on. So as what the topic has been delegated to me, I'm supposed to be touching upon the sustainability and equality concepts, which is correlating in the domain of higher education, right? I would give a disclaimer. I'm not very much, I would say, in consent or in agreement with the term called higher education. I'm not sure what does it supposed to mean. Yes, it is an advanced level, we can always say, because, you know, classifying it in terms of higher and lower, I'm not sure. Right? Yes, I think better terminology could be always is a primary and a advanced learning, etc. So we segregate ourselves +2 onwards to be the higher education level, where you have your different stakeholders who are participating. You have the private institutions and you have the conventional government institutions and all other institutions of higher learning, right? Now, it has a different domain, role, and set of regulation. Most of us are under dual regulators, that is the UGC, as well as we are under the specific technical, regulator. For example, us being law, we are under Bar Council then. So this is how we are regulated. Now, primarily we all are coming under HRD ministry. So that's where, the inception of plan policy starts. If we have to talk about this given theme, which we have set for today's discussion, and if you see, it is a few of the SDGs have been touched upon, that is 4, 5, 10, and 16. It's interesting to see that how we are trying to here marry two very diverse things together. Now the question comes, are they collaborative together? Is it possible to collaborate together? It's also interesting to see, if at all we collaborate, why do we collaborate sustainability and equality in higher education? What is the need of that? How do we justify that need? And if at all we are planning to do that, what should be our ways and means of accessing or approaching to that? So this is what it is. So can you change the slide, please? Today, when we are going to discuss this is going to be in 4 things we are going to discuss. Yeah. So that is equality and equity. Very similar, 2 terms, but they may have similarities as well as dissimilarities and slight overlapping. So we would take on these 2, and we are trying to again then correlate with any correlation, underlying correlation between the education and sustainability. Now, in order to start with, I would certainly like to start by introducing sustainability. Next slide, please. Could you just go F5 again? Because I think it's slideshow. That will be better, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. No issues. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Now, if I, just throw this term, I know it's a lazy afternoon after meal, all of us are little, but let's just try to, wake up and do some brainstorming. The term sustainability, we have these few questions in mind. It's I think one of the most beaten, fuzzy, most contested, debated word terminology. I always like to see if you have a conference in environment, I think 99 or 95% papers will be on sustainable development. So that is how we have overused. But are we sure about when we talk or use or discuss this term sustainability, what do we mean? What is it? Where do we apply? When do we apply? And then how, right? These are the basic. Now I'm going to add one more thing into this and make it a little more twist and complex for discussion. I am adding SDG 13, that is climate action, into it. Can we think of sustainability, or do we need to think of sustainability, especially when we need to put our action, approach, attention very urgently towards sustainable development, because we are at a threshold of climate change? And SDG 13 is asking that we need to do something, climate action. The government, ministries, countries are changing completely, turning in for doing something for climate. We have understood this current monsoon season is a very good example how there are still a lot of, I would say, a lot of trailer of climate change is going around. So if there is no rain, we are very concerned. If there is rain, we are faced with floods. Following floods, there are other chain reaction which are happening physiologically and ecologically. Entire hill states are under turmoil. So what is it that happening now? First and foremost thing, what happened in the whole domain of climate change, people kept on questioning and debating, is climate change is real or mythical? I would just throw this question to all of you and say, what is your response? What do you believe? Is climate change is real or it is mythical? Anyone?
Participant, you can put it in the chat box or you can raise your
Okay.
hand.
Or if you have designed it to be later also, it's fine, no problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh,
अभी सबका मैंने म्यूट किया हुआ है because disturbance.
all right, I understand. That's why I asked. No problem. Fine. So let me put it. So for a longer time, what?
Ma'am,
Yes.
generally we have at the end after your presentation, we will have the interaction session with participants.
All right.
Sure.
Fine. Thank you. No problem. So so for a longer time, what we did is we kept on questioning, arguing, debating, rejecting the idea there is nothing is happening, because and it was not completely unjustified. It was very much justified. Justification was that if you look at the history of Earth, the geology, the history of climate, Earth has been going through the cycles of climate change. So climate is supposed to be changing. It's like law, it is dynamic in nature. It is not supposed to be static. So if climate has been changing and has changed, it's natural phenomena, then the question comes, why are we concerned now? We know the geological history of the earth tells us we have gone from ice age to warmer periods, and we may move back to ice age again. So then where is the question and concern, and why so much of, I would say, a big halabulla is going on? The thing is, certainly it is a natural phenomena, but the fluctuations and the rate of change seems to be little different then. So in early 90s, what they started studying climate. A lot of studies, statistics, data is there. And one of the most common method which they adopted is to study the most primitive, oldest ice wherever possible. Now you might say, what ice has to do? They found ice from the core of the earth, and they have studied actually the air into it and the carbon into it. And they realized, yes, there is definitely a carbon emission which is going higher. And thereafter, the rest of it is like a chain reaction which was kept on happening and happening. So you had this rise in CO2 leading to rise in global temperature. That what we call global warming. Global warming then, causing melting of ice caps, melting of ice caps, then causing your rise of sea level and submergence of land, that causing other. So, there was a whole chain reaction which was going, and the temperature, studying temperature for a longer period of time also gave us an indication there is a definitely change in the weather pattern. So that debate got rested with all this intergovernmental panel coming out with all this, and it rested. And then we started doing something about it. And today we have full-fledged, ministries, governments, departments, working towards this, technological advancements, working towards climate change. So that debate has rested to some extent. So now if we have to talk about sustainability in the era of climate change, that becomes more important, much more important. So then let's understand what is sustainability is meant by, what is it supposed to mean to us. Yeah, next slide, please. See, it is an idea that how are we going to evolve, right? So we need to develop, there is no doubt about it. And in order to develop, of course, we're going to use up whatever resources that is lying around us. But how do we develop, and how much should be the quantity of development, the degree of development, the pattern of development, that has something to do with climate change. So we keep the goals of our development on one, and then say, what would be the means, methods, how what kind of approach, policy, technology we would see to reach that goal. So that is what climate change is all about. Next slide. This origin sometime back, again, there was no, sudden development. With the rise of the idea and consciousness about environment and environmentalism from Stockholm and prior to Stockholm, very interesting writings were there. One of such writing is known as Our Common Future, right? Now see, the title itself is so interesting. We understood there is a future for us, standing at that point of the part of human history, milestone, and we were looking at the future, and we wanted to know what kind of future are we going to have together. So we are not talking about individuals, we are not talking about state, country, we are talking about together as humanity, as earth. So this particular writing became a very, very important piece of writing, which brought out, and under the chairmanship of the Norwegian Prime Minister, and that's how it has acquired the name called Brundtland Report. And this, for the first time, told us that there are going to be problems, there is inherent problem with our development. Along with this, there were other writings also. And one of the writings more I would like to mention, which I may have missed here, is a writing which was written by, Silent Spring. So Silent Spring was one writing which was very interestingly written by a biologist in US. And initially when she was writing it, Rachel Carson, her name is, people did not pay attention, government did not want to publish her writing, but she had such a very basic observation. See, observation is the first skill as human we have. So she observed there are spring. Now, if you all of us know what is spring, spring is supposed to be very, very, happening event in the nature. So you have the summer, then we transit into rains, then followed by winter. After winter, in the winter, if you see, the whole nature goes into a dormant stage, and then it just kicks back, thrives back in spring. Now, during spring, it's supposed to be a lot of activity, and we do celebrate, because as a country, we have a very fantastic astronomical scientific calendars which celebrates things like Vasant Utsav, Vasant Panchami, because we know that's alignment with nature. So this particular spring supposed to be once again kickstart the life. It is supposed to be full with procreation and breeding and all, and blooming. But she observed that as a child, what she had seen springs were very, very memorable. But she saw later on springs were quite silent in her surrounding. And she kept on questioning why the springs have become silent, and that's why her writing is titled as Silent Spring. Then what were her conclusions? She had run as a biologist, she was a scientist, she ran a lot of tests. And she came to conclusion that, post Second World War, we have been using a lot of chemical substances without any restrictions and unregulated manner, and that is now leading a lot of changes into our entire environment. And therefore, there is something which is changing. The nature around us is getting affected, impacted adversely, and it's becoming silent. And she also said, see, we must remember, in the whole chain of ecology, we are also somewhere at the receiving end. So today, if it is the ecology which is impacted, the nature which is impacted, other species, plants, and all are impacted, definitely it would lead to us. Now, this she wrote in 1960s, Today, what we see, then now we know there are microplastics in our blood, in the water, and how much contamination. So it has all come true. So what I'm trying to essentially say by presenting these piece of writings, that a lot of writings started, which kindly created awareness towards environment and kept on questioning our development. And that is where sustainable development came as a concept. Now, sustainable development was defined for the first time by this Bertland report, which says it is the development to meet the need of the present. We should not compromise with the need of the future generations. Now, imagine that, all our grandfather, forefathers may have, given us a lot of account, narrations, how pure things were, how pure the river was, how pure food was, how it used to smell when you go in a particular, natural flowers, and we can see the variation. Things like most basic, without which we cannot survive, air and water, two components, which mankind received as a free gift of nature, today has turned into, especially water, has been turned into a world's most traded commodity, heavily regulated by state. And you do not have any human right then, because if it is available, most of us are buying. We know how much we are buying. Thankfully, we still have. We are not sure whether few. So today, how are we using it? One component, if we take the availability of water which is there, how are we using it? That would depend in future how much we would have. So to meet the need of present generation, I need to wash my car, I need to wash my entire house, I need to wash my garden, I need to throw every day my water which is unused. Why? Because supposed to be basi pani. This irrational behavior which we have, we are not looking into that what's going to happen in future. So therefore, sustainable development just tries to bring this. And this is also connected with another principle, which is known as intergenerational equity. Between each generations, every generation has equal and equitable right on the resource and on the earth, all the resource and on the earth, to develop themselves. There need not to be compromise. Why this generation or future generations, they may have to walk out with a lot of mask and can't breathe fresh air, or we don't know whether we would be carrying small portable oxygen cans. So it puts an obligation, intergenerational equity, that every generation on earth has equal rights, and that must be restored. So each generation is under obligation to take care of its need and fulfill them in such a manner that you don't end up depleting everything and left nothing but heaps of garbage and full of pollution, and that's what we are leaving out, and lands full of plastics. So this the concept was given through this particular report, and it talks about how are we going to take approach. So maybe we need to more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient Resilient means, we understand, and then hence we need to cut down, we may do so. Yeah, next please. So now this sustainable development concept has got three, pillars, you can say verticals, So now one is the environmental sustainability, second is economic sustainability, and third is social sustainability. Now you might say, ki, how do they? Please understand, there is no domain in human society works in isolation. So your environment is deeply, correlated with your economics, and economics is also connected with your environment, and environment is connected with your social society and sociology. So there is a lot of integration, and there is a lot of common ground. That common ground is what is sustainability is all about. So you would like to economically develop, fantastic, we may develop, but how should we develop? That is what is the main debate of sustainability. If you see, I have put that, we have now fixed, we have moved much ahead of us defining this. Today, we are talking about achieving sustainable goals, and we have decided the 17 goals, and every country and all, we are working and checking out and reviewing and ranking countries accordingly. So by 2030, let's see where do we reach. Okay, next slide. Now, there are different perceptions towards sustainability. Some people may say, okay, does it mean it is a hindrance or obstacle? It's going to pause our growth. It won't allow. So second way of putting it, sustainability is nothing, but it is totally anti-development lobby. Those who talk about sustainability, certainly they are all anti-developmental lobby. They don't want development. They are the one who are trying to create a roadblock. Next is it important? Can we do without sustainability? Is it sine qua non? Or it is something we cannot do that without it? And the last is any correlation. If we talk about the ultimate law, that is natural law, and the perception of justice, does it have any correlation with that? If that is, then sustainability is essentially means a lot for us, and we need to understand, adopt, work, and approach towards it. Yeah, next slide. Now, this is another interesting piece of writing, and again, I would like to draw your attention towards the title of this paper. So this is Peter Horton and Benjamin Horton. They have written redefining sustainability. So we just try to understand what is sustainability means. They are saying no, now we need to redefine. So how sustainability is defined may not still be enough. Shall we need to keep on working and redefine it in living harmony with life on earth? Now, I'm not sure whether there is a possibility of life elsewhere. We are trying very hard, thanks to Tesla and thanks to SpaceX. We are exploring a lot from the government, from the private entities, a lot of investments, a lot of research is going on. But as if now, we know this is where it is possible. So if you're going to live, and harmony is something, we know, if we stop harmony, how we can turn to be completely savage, and the world would be, anyway, there is so much of war and conflict, how much. So on one hand, we are very interesting, our behavior is very interesting getting on. We are completely getting into self-destructive mode. On one hand, we are talking about building peace, this. On the other hand, ongoing so much of war and destruction. If you look at the destruction of the war, I don't know how are we going to do the accounting for cultural loss, social loss, historical, anthropological, ecological. We are so concerned about CO2 emission. Is any of us are talking about the emission out of the war? No. No accounting there. And who is fighting whom? It's not clear. For what is that war? Underline it could be energy war. A lot of time it's nothing but it's another, international geopolitics, neocolonialism, and it is nothing at the guise of energy war and resource. It's what going on now. So this is what it says. So this piece of writing talks about, can we need to redefine sustainability if we want essentially harmony and on our harmonious life on earth. And it says, look at what's happening on earth. So it talks about the small little paragraph which I have put in before you, like an abstract. It talks about there are frequencies of change which is happening. And in this, and it's a moment of crisis, if we need to survive, we definitely need to do something, even though we are reluctant. We may be reluctant towards it. So again, a very interesting trend of writing, discussions, and all going on, which might again justify the need of adopting and approaching for sustainability. Next. Yeah. Uh, when we look back, I have put in front of you, I hope, I'm not sure how clear it is visible. What I have put is different graphs which are showing us the climate change. And on the, if you see the vertical, the bar graph, which are showing the stages of human development. And it's the horizontal bar graph which are showing our evolution. So all this were going very quite simultaneously. So as we evolved stages after stages biologically, and we socio-economically, we kept on developing. And especially if you look at from the time, let's say post Second World War, we were devastated with the World War, and we decided no more war, and we replaced the earlier institution, and we said, okay, UN will be the next body instead of the League of Nations, and we need to do a fix. And we proclaimed something else also along, because we were devastated. We thought war was a backfooting. Let's take a foot forward. And we said we are going to develop. So right to development was proclaimed as a right of each sovereign nation. And it was given as a legal right to that you can acquire, you can achieve development as your sovereign right within your territorial limits by using all the resources that you have, and there would be no interference or intervention. This led to the second journey of development and socioeconomic development. So post that, your industrialization, urbanization, everything picked up at a very high, and the new phase of development, what we call as a globalization. At the same time, parallelly, there were a lot of changes which also started in the environment, in the nature. So our growth story actually has turned into now what I call it growth spill. So at one hand, let's say if we are growing, let's say at a pace of, let's say 20%, 30%, the ill effects of environment maybe is growing, it's much higher rate, 40, 50%. And though we are trying very hard to balance or bring it, at par or arrest or restrict, we are not able to do. And now today we are started accounting per capita, per person, GDP wise, for climate change, how much is going to cost, what is the cost of pollution per capita, per person, what is going to be impacting in our GDP, how much it is going to impact into our life expectancy also. And ultimately in economic terms, in financial terms, how costly is it going to be for us? So which means that growth journey, which we started thinking this is what development is all about, we were trying to achieve. Today, it's looking to be very, very obscure. Or there are huge roadblocks which we are not sure how are we going to pass or bypass. Or we are trying a lot of quick fix, but not sure how far it's working. And our question is again, I hope we would survive on the other side. All right. Yeah. Next slide. So there are 3 E which the sustainability approach adopts. That's equity, environment, and say economy, right? Now, there is an intersection possible between all 3 if we can do that. Yes, we work for the economy. At the same time, we are able to balance our environment and maintaining equity. Now, here, little more, further as we go, we can get into equity and equality, and we will see how there are different perceptions within that also. All right. Okay, so next slide. This is another, just illustration that, there can be such, situations or events, and how we may, approach it. So for example, if you're one of them, we may take at the top bar, which is given, let's say the GHG emission. Okay, greenhouse gases are emitted at a very large. I just told you, look at all the watts and so much. Now we may take action. We there's no change when do, and if we don't do any change, there might be the resultant will be okay. There would be a collapse. So one of the collapse which we had seen earlier, if you see, global warming had caused depletion of ozone layer. And interesting is we did not build that ozone layer. It was a natural built. It was a protection layer for us. But suddenly it got depleted. And we had, pictures, satellite pictures, NASA proving us this is where it lies upon the Iceland, Greenland. That's where it is located. Interestingly, very recent images shows it has filled up. Now we are not sure how did it fill up, whether all our effort to restrict or prohibit greenhouse gases may have resulted. So when you have these kind of challenges, one after another, water shortage or food shortage, wildfire, day before yesterday, there was very contrasting images coming in the television. That is China and USA. You know how good friends or not friends they are politically. So China is completely, is collapsing with floods, uncontrolled floods. They're so good in building, and they're I think best in the world in building things, including moon or something they have built. But they can't do anything much about when it comes to flood, which is a natural phenomenon. Comparatively, completely contrast pictures in US, which was grappling with wildfire. Now again another natural phenomenon. So initial our understandings were much different. All of us knew, understood, if you have a natural water body or a river, it is supposed to have different, conditions in different period of the time and climate and weather and season. So river is supposed to swell, river is supposed to shrink in the drier season, and you need to leave the space. Floods were never seen as so devastating. They were actually also looking at floods because it would bring up fertile soil layers, and people knew how much to distance. But today you and me want to go right up to the beach, right up to the bank, have things on the bank, river bank, encroach river bank. So there are going to be result of that adverse. So environmental crisis is just an hint or trailer for us. Do we want to take action on that? Depending on the action we can have. For example, if you look at the technological fix, all of us talk about. So you have now better engines, better car with emission. You have developed your alternative energy. You are talking about more renewable energy. These are technological fixes. This definitely is going to bring help, to some extent. But if you need to really transform, the whole thing has to be now looked into, redesigned from the sustainability lens. Then only it is possible. Next. Now, once we have understood, or we have enough basic fundamental, that what is sustainability means and how important, what is the need justification, in this juncture we may now try to establish a correlation and see whether there is a probe and see where there is a nexus between education and sustainability. What we call essentially ourselves to be educated, I would differ and say we are highly qualified. Being on higher education, we are technically qualified. There's one thing called literacy where you have the mere ability to read and write. A qualified, very well qualified person need not to be very educated person. Education is supposed to bring a lot of understanding into it in the first place. And that's how, Nelson Mandela has, conceptualized it, defined it, saying it is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. 2 days back, somebody has sent a clip to me, and I was just watching that when the world was still grappling with a lot of issues and dark ages, India had everything. Our calendars were more cosmic. Our science and understanding, our building architecture, our treatment and therapy, everything was much ahead of the time. Yes, but it was very localized. We did not had the power of a global language where we have, we were not good in few things. That was one was documentation. We did not maintain our documents and archives and all. Neither we had the power of communication that we could have documented and then take it to the whole world, which colonization did. And we had a problem of little bit of lack of unity. So the system collapsed and we had went through this colonization and all. But the educational intervention can actually transform. So if you talk about social transformation, there cannot be a better tool than this. Most of us who are, from me, myself being from the 70s generation, we know, because I did my basics graduation is on geography. So I know some of us have understood or heard the word called ecology, environment, but all disciplines have not studied, including our constitution. They said it was environmentally blind till 42nd amendment, because the word environment was never ever was mentioned. So we had education, but whether the education was taking care of what's happening around and how it needs to transform is something. So today, if you want sustainability to become the way of life practice, the new ways, pathways, it cannot be anything better than education which can bring this transformation. All right. Yes, please change. So when you look at, it actually develops our capacities of understanding, thinking, rationalizing, questioning. Without that, we cannot be, like robots, or who won't think and just act. Today, how we act is, a lot of time it is a thoughtless action which is going on. We think this is what is right and we go on. We never stop, never think, never pose a query. Education has also become very important today, a constitutional right, a human right, once it has been now proclaimed under the Universal Declaration of Human Right, under constitutional right, even we have put it under fundamental right. So having this importance, which the education holds for transforming society, there is a very important for us, urgently important for us, that we do a matchmaking very quickly. So environmental awareness, and the success story can be the environmental awareness. So what I was telling you, that my generation never heard about environment and sustainability. It came much later by way of enforcement and law. It is only when Supreme Court said, okay, all curriculum needs to be now environmentally, oriented. Environmental education has to be sine qua non. We have to essentially start imparting. Today, you ask a primary education level kid or school kid, they know what is climate change, or they are at least familiar with these concepts. But for a longer time, there were lack of awareness, and education has brought that awareness. So definitely for sustainability also, it has to be through education, which we have to start imparting on the first layer of it. Thereafter, much more to follow. Next. If you look at the statistics in higher education, uh, compared to the population, not very significant, but not a very small. It's a very vast domain. So if we need to, turn ourselves to, agent of change, bring that, it can be a very good, domain which can start introducing that. And at a higher and, much advanced level, we can, actually start incorporating these ideas, which can then start percolating to level and below and up to the grassroots level. So this is just an statistics to show the stake of the education sector at the advanced level. Next is, if we talk about education, the moment we make people, aware, they have the ability to think, understand, there would be questions on equity and equality. Now, equality, how do we conceptualize equality? What do we mean by equality? Is it that, something which is very means to homogeneity? Is it inclusive of unequality also? So there are a lot of interpretations. Some of us who come from the domain of law, we know how our constitutional interpretation has gone. So equality among equals and equality among unequals. So it is not what we understand. Equality is not a straight jacket formula, for sure. We definitely need to look at equality from a different, angle and notion. So there cannot be a one, angle. There needs to be cross sectional, vertical, and different angles where we have to look. And their equality is connected with another similar term called equity. Yeah, next slide. So let's understand, just to refresh our, before we move on to the next term, equal. What do it mean? Equality is defined very simply. Start from the dictionary. It is nothing, the state of being equal, right? Now, two individuals, we may have very different aspirations. We can be very, so there can be certain things which are common to us. We are homogeneous in some sense. There can be something which is not common, or we are not homogeneous, yet we can be equal at certain parameters. So depend from which perspective and dimension are we looking equality. What we want to achieve through that equality would depend how are we. So it's a relative term. It's not an absolute term, I would say. If you look at the UNESCO's definition, it says it's nothing but a state of affairs or results. So it's looking at the impact of it when all the members of a particular group would have same input, same output, outcome, status, right, responsibilities. Today, when we talk about, you look at our just now budget is gone, and we talk about taxations, right? We know how equal it is. A large part of population is still not, they are not capable enough to give, contribute. But then that does not bring, any cheering for those who are paying. They feel it very adverse. So no matter how much, thanks to the new approach of the income tax, which is, oh, thanks for contributing to the nation. Yeah, it feels good for a moment, but 99.9 of us feels it is a pinch. And since those of us who are salaried, it's a pinch at source. So I just earned. I can never have it completely. It is tax at the source. But it has been established as that is the equality. So what is the equality here? It is the equality which is proportional. It is equality which is on the basis of income. It is equality according to the capacity. And in spite of all inequalities, it is supposed to be bringing an equal and a more fair system. So this is how equality has to be defined, looked, and understood. Constitution has also even delegated rights where we can be striking equality. Some of the fundamental rights can be taken, and other rights can be, and with including their remedies. If it is, there is a violation, or there is any kind of, conflict, inconsistency, we may have constitutional rights. And the obligation lies not only to the state, the authorities, institutions, everyone, that we do not encroach upon the equality factor. Next. Now comes the similar terms, which is equity. How do we differentiate? Are they same? Are they similar? A lot of times what may happen, in a day-to-day, our talk or day-to-day, conversation, we use words very loosely. So we may say, oh, it remains the same. An advocate and a lawyer means the same. They don't. For the rest of the world and community is lawyers, but those of us who are from the domain of law, we understand very well it is advocate, which is the correct word, and essentially the person must be enrolled. Without enrollment, no one, and is supposed to be advocate, and then maybe junior, senior, and other hierarchies. So sometimes, words are used in the general sense in a very, very, simple manner. But when you look at them, technically or formally, they may have differences in them. Similarly, equality and equity may sound similar. They can be maybe used as synonyms, but essentially not. Equality means when you are going to give everything which is same, giving same, bringing everybody into homogeneous. So everybody gets food. Yeah, everybody got food. What if somebody cannot eat food? I can't eat that particular food. So what do? You don't give food, or you do give food which is suitable or the person can have. That is how equality and equity has to be blended with. Equity recognizes that that the difference factor, that particular factor. So when we look at our reservation system, and here is one disclaimer I would give: very good whistleblowing case has happened. All of us are reading in the news and media with this IS officer's case. Once again, it is forcing back us to think, do we need to redefine and redesign the concept of equity and equality? Because when we introduced reservation in 90s, I remember we were in the college those days, how Mandal Commission came and what kind of movement was, India was, completely under, and it was a huge, very powerful social movement happened in the education sector, looking at the social reality, judicial intervention and everything, and finally we settled with something called reservation policy, and based on equity and equality. Because very clearly Article 13, 14, everything says no discrimination, state shall not discriminate. The power, constitutional power was given now, delegated now, to give state a power so it can discriminate. But why? The very intention changes the whole thing, how we look at it. So it is to bring equality. If somebody is not equal, you need to protect that person, and that is what equity and equality is all about. So they have to go hand in hand. So bringing homogeneity, but if in homogeneity somebody is different, how do you take care of that person's and then bring everything equally? That is what equity and so they would go very much hand in hand. They cannot be one thing called. Then it will be a very straight jacket how we look at it. Yes. Next, please. This is a lighter example of how we can, understand. So let's just look at and say, everybody gets same. I think most of us know that tagline says, "Ek se mera kya hoga?" So the camel might well say, "Ki isse mera kya hoga? I need more," right? So now you have ads also where camel drinks Bisleri and say, "Very pure and nice." So each has different needs. You need to understand that, and accordingly it has to be designed, and accordingly it has to be policy has to be taken care of. You cannot ignore everybody's different needs and say no, we all are fine. So everybody gets a left side haircut and everybody doesn't get a right side. So it's not that's not equality, and equity is all about. All right. Yeah. Next one. Now, equity and equality, why it is so much concern before we start talking about the sustainability in education, because equity and equality is also deeply connected with the thing called justice, and justice in turn is connected with something called fairness. How can you be fair? What is fairness? Why should we have fairness? Because please understand, let's go back again. We came together as a community and a nation and a state, believing in that theory called social contract theory. Our whole idea that together we would be better off. We are ready to compromise in some of our rights and privileges, but everybody will get their social and political rights. Then that developed into further from Magna Carta to Constitution, fundamental rights. So if you want to ensure fairness, if you want to give rights which are based on your constitution or natural law for that matter, there is definitely where you need to adopt equity and equality very much. So that is going to be again something which is going to be indispensable, without which we will not have any forward movement for achieving sustainability in the domain of education. Next slide, please. So this is just a key. How do we, there are differences and how do we? So it's just the same, nothing much. So yes, next please. Now I want to play a small clip that, when we talk about providing equality, sometimes it might have different impact. And that's why for us, it is important to understand the different facets of it. Yeah. Just see, can you play, Mona? There's no sound, I guess.
साउंड नहीं आ रहा है थोड़ा बहुत
Yeah, that's what I don't know why. All right, I can always share it. You want to take it in your, just paste the link in a normal browser and try. So fine, otherwise it's fine, no problem.
Yes, ma'am. I'm trying.
No problem. Thank you.
Is the voice coming?
नो नो नो
No.
नहीं नहीं
Okay, no problem. Fine, let's go to 1853. Watch it like Alamara. No problem. It can be a silent one. We can still talk about.
Should I play the video again?
Let people watch it.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
fine. I'll give the narration. No problem. I'll tell
Okay.
what. Subtitles are there, in the, so one can read also. Okay, Mona, we'll stop. I'll just tell because I don't think much enjoying there. So
Okay,
I'll just
so
narrate.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. So what happens is this depicts a very normal, any office scene, a regular office scene. And there are different people who works, you know. So there's a lady who moves into a sari, and there's another gentleman who is a little special able, or he has a issue with the, you know, walking with his leg. And there's another girl who comes. So now what happens, they are different people who do not like certain comments, and how they were differentiated or discriminated is it all about. So the lady who came in sari, the other gentleman, Mishraji, said, "Ki, wow, you're looking nice." And then Mishraji says, "Oh, you are dressed for your appraisal." So when a woman dressed, she dressed for her appraisal or impressing someone. That is how. So gender wise, she was, you know, targeted. She felt. She did not take it. He said, "You're looking nice." And the next sentence was, "Oh, you dressed because of this." So she felt uncomfortable. She said, "No, I don't dress because of this. I just dressed." So she felt gender wise not very welcoming. Little later, the other girl who comes, she needed leave. And she was just sharing with her, you know, colleague that I want to leave and I'm going to talk. They just said, "What excuse?" and this and that, and says, "Oh, you are Madrasi bonding." So community wise, culture wise, again, you are trying to discriminate people, or highlight people, target people. Thirdly, what happens little later when the work, they discuss on a project, and Mishra ji is the person who has done the project, but it was given to another young person, saying this involves a lot of traveling, and Mishra ji, because of your leg issue, you will not be comfortable. So he felt he's been targeted or highlighted or discriminated on the basis of his physical ability. So, you know, discrimination or you know, equality. So now here, if you have to bring equality, you will have to think differently. So from the cultural point, social point, physical point, the ability point, mental, so many facets of it. So it's not something which is a very flat or no, you know, we can paint it like one color or picture and everybody would be equal. No. So how far? Recently, I'm not sure how fast, you know, there is a case which happened, and the clip is available. It's viral already in a lot of platforms. And this case essentially shows a judge who is now, during the proceeding, the judge is questioning which husband, how many husbands. So the case is going around as seven husbands. Sat Khun Maaf, also we saw a movie similar, you know. So a lady has married sixth time. This is her seventh divorce petition. Now, please, for a second, let's recall the position of women in India, the constitutional status of women, all the protective discrimination which has been given and granted to women, and we talk about women education, especially women's right and all that, and women commission to that extent, and Ministry of Child and Women and Empowerment, all that, right? Now here one person who decides to use and abuse the law, left, right, center, she had already had the benefit of, I would say, benefit of 6 divorces. And how they have same pattern. Thankfully this was one prudent judge who took care of, you know, going through, and all. Sometimes proceedings are very, you know, fast and summary and no one, you know, pays. So he asked, he says, "How many?" This 6. What was the span of marriage? 1 year something. What was, how did ended? Everything ended filing of for, you know, criminal 498A, she's filing against every husband. And then what she does is files a divorce as a tactics of pressure. And then later on, what she does is she actually goes and does a settlement. So it has become a money making mechanism. Now, interesting to observe, one lawyer has handled, or how many lawyers have handled. So do you blame her alone? No, the system also is in place. So when you talk about equality, equity, you know, this is how equality has been given for protection and certain. So the legislative intent can be very different. Constitutional mandate is very different. The philosophy of constitution is very different. Why should we bring fairness, justice, equity, equality? But this is how it may turn out to be. So now how do you strike the chord? How do you balance? So at least the judge was very prudent enough, wise enough to go through everything, and he had looked at pattern and done so much, of observed so much, and says next hearing he wants all the husbands to come out and to listen to them, to listen to them. So sometimes equity and equality can be subverted, or it can be used, abused in any. So we need to be very, very careful, when we create these, and also have exceptions to it. It can not become a very, very, same thing for every, not a blanket ban kind of a thing. Yes, next please. This is another, illustration, simple illustration. There are people, 1, 2, 3, different capacities. How do you give them access and visibility when you talk about equity and equality? One is, okay, we put everybody 1, 1. So 2 of them in the first picture, they can use that platform. Third person, because of the wheelchair, though you have given equal opportunity, is not in a capacity to use. It doesn't suit his or her condition. Compare the other half of the picture, where the first person has not given anything, and the second, the person is on top of 2 platforms because of her smaller height and all, would need more, and the third person has been given a different type of support and platform. Now this is what equity, equality is supposed to be like. So we need to be open to different people, idea, notions, their differences in their political, legal, ideological, economical, social, cultural capacities, and design it differently. Then only it would be able to, achieve the true objective of wherever we are incorporating these 2 concepts. Yes, next please. Now, this is again, I am not sure. There is a video which I have just narrated. This is a case video, so it can be shared with the participants and they can watch later, because I'm not sure again whether the clip will play, or you may try. Mona, can you try?
Yes, ma'am.
Just see.
Is the voice coming?
No, not this. This is the one, same one. Oh, I thought this is another one. Okay, no need then. No need. Let it be, Mona. Sorry.
Okay.
My. Okay. I'm so sorry. Okay. So may have pasted it twice. Yeah. Can you change the slide, please? Yeah. So now, coming to back to, the sustainability approach. If we want education to be, the means and it to the tool through which we have to adopt, incorporate, we must understand that sustainability will have certain requirements. The first and the very foremost requirement of sustainability is to understand the issues and challenges. Some time back, I talked about climate change and crisis. We need to understand what kind of problem. If we can have a social problem, we can have a legal problem, we can have a social legal problem, we can have a cultural, socio-cultural problem. So understanding the problem. In case of sustainability, we need to understand what are the challenges of sustainability. So climate change is one such. Second can be, economic development can be second challenge. Third can be depletion of resource, shrinking of lands, rising of population. So understanding the challenge itself is the half, game. If you understand, and that understanding can be only developed through inclusive and education. If you're not educated, you may fail to understand. You would say, what happens? You will not question, you will not probe into it. Next is making choices and decisions. The sustainability always calls for, it is not that little while ago we were asking ourselves the question, whether sustainability is anti-development, whether sustainability is the hindrance in our development. The answer is no. Sustainability only can we make alternate or different choices in a given circumstances. I have a choice. Okay, I may carry, nothing and just go for shopping and then end up coming with 50, plastic bags. And we say, ye to free mil raha hai. Let us understand the economy is very circular. So if someone or somebody is paying, ultimately we all are paying it. So there is nothing which comes as free. So making a choice here, instead of that, if I choose that, no, every time I'm not going to have any plastics and good for my home and good for environment and everything, and let's cut down plastic, say no to plastic, and I every time use a carry bag to go for a shopping. So it is about making that decision. It is about choosing that. Sometimes when we buy, things, if they are good quality things, they have the mark of quality hallmark, or they have, like, for gadgets, they have energy, they're going to cost us. They are costlier in the market. That's how the market is designed. But what we choose, we would always look as an individual at the one time cost and do not look at the recurring cost or the ecological cost. Here, the whole problem of challenge of sustainability is the word cost has been heavily, it has been defined as only economic cost. We don't talk about any ecological cost, environment cost, social cost, nothing else. Mental and well-being cost, we don't account. So the word cost have to be defined accordingly. So even if we have to think of sustainability and make the decisions which are going to be from the sustainability, point perspective, it has to be the right choices and right decision making, and that would only come through education. Sustainability also is a lot of problem solving. Today, when you see your resources are depleting, you're running away with running low with all your reserves and resources. It's a very interesting problem, that how are you going to invent and reinvent yourself? So we talk about, coming out with startups and innovation and doing matchmaking with the technology and other domains, and coming out with solutions. Because the ultimate question and quest for human beings always have been, are we going to survive and can we survive? COVID time, how we solved problems, how we got united, that the crisis had put us together. So problem solving is something, again, another thing which is going to be an important part of sustainability, and that is again going to be much more strengthened and feasible only through education and means of education. Next is, how do we practice? Okay, concept wise, fantastic. Sustainability is nothing. Okay, it is about, to meet the need of the present, we should not compromise. Fine. This 2.5 line concept, how am I going to apply in a given context, in a real life situation? So for this, what we do is we apply tools and techniques of sustainability. Tools and technique of sustainability. They are precaution. Some of us are aware they are precautionary principle, polluter pay principle. I said little while ago, intergenerational equity, common differentiated. These are tools and techniques. In order to apply, you need to understand them, study them, and know how they are need to be brought into the practice and real life context. Sustainability would call for redesigning our growth, having this understanding that the growth, the design, the pattern which we have adopted as a community on this planet called Earth, the entire humanity is a community, is definitely calls for need for a redesigning of things. We need to once again start giving a fresh, look. Oh, we were having cars like this. These are not sustainable anymore. They cannot run anymore. So are we going to bring option one? Let's stop using car. Option number 2, we can use, but we can have other. So we are trying to bring these solutions, based on, so redesign, rethink as a community, as a whole, population in this earth. Next is preparedness and adaptation. Any ecological crisis, climate change, or any other crisis which today we are facing, from the sustainability point, it would need a lot of preparedness. Most of us are aware something which happened very sad 2 days back is how water gushed into a coaching center in Delhi, and uh, it has killed people. Now it definitely calls for introspection, how these institutes are running, what kind of regulation are they following, not local municipality authorities, what's happening. At the same time, preparedness, what about our own preparedness? This whole law, when you look at the images of flood or any disaster, and I look at the team of NDRF, or I look at where NDRF is not available. Before that, it was always army who would be, navy who would be pitched into peacetime. This is how they serve us. But why? Why, as a community, as an individual, we do never learn how to be prepared? So preparedness, adaptation, resilient approach. Yes, it is changing. It's going to be difficult. There will be scarcity of water. Temperatures would rise. How we can still manage and be resilient towards it. This mindset shift approach is only going to get transformed, communicated, and absorbed through education, and it would become a big career or means to achieve this idea. Next is when you talk about, if you are going to start practicing sustainability, apply and approach sustainability in practice, it would need a lot of policy change and intervention or transition of policy. Today, a lot of things you can know, even if you know you want to do, you want to, there has to be a policy transition. There has to be a policy intervention. If policy intervention do not happen, policy change or transition do not happen, we will not have the power and capacity as an individual or a state to do so. So this will be one important tool to adapt for. And the last is adaptation of harmonious approach. Our development story, which we looked at, our growth story, and the narratives which I shared, the writings, the equation has changed a lot. Initially, when we, evolved, we came into this earth, suddenly we found ourselves in this beautiful paradise. That's how people say supposed to be, whether as Adam and Eve or whoever else. Suddenly what happened, we had a very symbiotic relation. We were in a very harmonious relation, because we understand that we were very, very much fraction or a part of this whole bigger system called nature. But as our modern way of life development approach happened, our perception changed. And with technology and advancement and scientific development, we thought we can dominate, take over, win over everything. This shift in our mind has actually caused completely change in that equation. So then we came to the second equation phase, where we said environment development equals to environment minus. We started negating environment completely. And today what's happening, even the development is becoming negative because of environment. So the approach towards it still has to be harmonious. It doesn't give you a fraction of second. The world has to just slightly, like you and me may, just little bit of nudge or move. What is the level of catastrophe it can cause? When I look at the image of tsunami, for me, it's as good as how I wipe out a blackboard in my class. So nature has its own way of cleaning up, balancing. So need to understand that, and education can become an essential tool, vehicle to bring this transformation. Next slide, please. So we are now talking about, in order to do this matchmaking, there is something we have to come up saying, education for sustainable development. So like we started some time back, environmental education, we need to start sustainable education. At our institute, what we are trying now, we have introduced a smaller version and we say climate change elective. So in the environmental genre, we are giving climate change as a course. Of course, being a law institute, it's not a very interdisciplinary, but this needs to get into a much more interdisciplinary. So it has to be for policymakers, change makers, it has to be for, technocrats, science people, economists, everybody, depending on little bit of tweaking upon, but it has to be now started, applying, incorporating in different disciplines, across disciplines, and it has to be imparted along with our mainstream education. So sustainable development has to become now sine qua non or important in our formal and our higher learning and education without any. It is on which we would be, so that's what I have used the word bedrock, on which we can then build upon. Create the awareness. If you're not aware, nothing is happening. Trump said there is no climate change. He refused to acknowledge climate change. Obama regime came. Now you might say, what happens if Trump doesn't? Please understand that's how the whole equation of international geopolitics work. So if US signs, it brings a lot of confidence into that instrument, which the other countries and smaller countries will also sign. If USA does a U-turn, so after Barack Obama's regime, who signed the climate change agreement of Paris in 2015, Trump came and refuted. He took a U-turn. He says nothing doing. Oh, climate change is nothing. He had a very good articulation, and he says it's a Chinese sabotage. Now, how do you justify this kind of rationality thinking by somebody who is leading world's democracy? So awareness, responsibility, you have to have, being the largest democracy, you have to show a responsible behavior towards it. Next is, social equity and inclusion. It is suggested that if climate change is going to go on increasing in its degrees and, the range, it may not hit everybody same. The vulnerability degrees will depend on our social economical capacities. So if it is becomes like, that you have no option but, submergence, we are talking about, uh, global climate change, rise of sea level and submergence of land. If you see, every time we have a COP meeting or a climate change agreement or any kind of that kind of gathering international level, this smaller country try to have a very strong, they projection, and they would like to put their advocate in a very strong manner. Why? Because they are at the most vulnerable threshold. So 1 meter of rise of sea level, a lot of submergence will happen, and there's hardly anywhere you can go. We are not even allowing migration. You know how it is, again, very, very political. Where you would allow, I saw a very interesting image where Indonesia, Rohingya issue happened, anthropological, cultural, political happened. In India, we couldn't, and I think huge number of legal, illegal refugees have come into India. Very close to that, now there were a group of them approached Indonesia. Indonesia just did not. The coasts where Indonesia were so heavily guarded. They came in smaller boat. You don't even know whether they can sail back with families and children and with nothing. Indonesian police did not allow them on land. They just stopped them, gave them food, water on humanitarian ground temporarily, and said, go back. Now, where do you go back? We are not concerned. So when you talk about social equity and inclusion, local level, national level, global level, it has to be taken a lot of consideration. That how are we marginalized? Are we very much have a same capacity? How we would be impacted by it? And then accordingly, we have to think, how are we going to redesign? And again, your sustainability approach will be blended with equity and equality, both factors. Next is economic literacy and innovation, because the economic development which we are today adopting is not a very sustainable one. For a longer time, all the economists did, they kept on denial that environmental problem and issues are not our problem. These are externalities. It's out of the domain of economics. Today, you have a very different approach. Environment and economics is working together, and you have a new domain called environmental economics. Today, you are using a tool of economics called tax and using it in the domain of environment to regulate your pollution. So you're putting green tax, pollution tax. So this is how it has to be integrated and blended with. Last is literacy again. Literacy has to be then promote into innovations, a lot of innovations. Look at the problems and come up with innovation. No wonder that we are today trying very hard to come up with startups and innovation and entrepreneurship. Because we understand, environmental problems by nature are mostly very global problems supposed to be. But most of us cannot work that globally. Even if you want to cut down 1 degree or 2 degree of emission, you know how Herculean task is that. So the better approach is reverse. You think globally. It's a common problem of the global commons. You must work locally. You must think locally. Find solutions and innovation which are very local and feasible, and again suitable to the conditions you are. The problem which we have may not be the set of problem for another area and another context. So that approach would be also important when we think of innovation and bringing solutions through technology and innovation. Next, please. So this is just, once again, I've put the targets which the SDG 4 is saying, that how in education, if you want to bring, what are the main focal areas will be, how do we upgrade? So the education, what changes we would need to make into our regular education system, and then how that can, take us close to the sustainability. That's the whole area of, putting these SDGs, that in each area or domain of human life, can you start mapping and do the integration between these domain and sustainability together. Next, please. So this is something what I would like to stop. Apart from the ecological and global climate change and crisis, globalization, the revolution of information technology and communication, and this constant, quest for economic development are also three of additional changes which we have to take care whenever we are talking about achieving sustainability through education. They cannot be undermined. These are very much social realities which we are living and facing with. And here again, we need to relook and rethink how equality, what does it mean, what equity, how are we going to bring it, do the matchmaking and all. Is inclusivity is the better idea and word, maybe, because sometimes you cannot differentiate between both. So again, being inclusive means what? Who do you include, when, where, how? The final quest which I want to come and stop at, if you look at, I have put the image of the earth. I cannot ask you, I wish I could have asked you why and what you think. That's a fact of our life where the buck stops. The buck stops that we have only one earth. So the climate, the change, the degradation, the pollution, the innovation, the development, whatever is happening, it's happening here for now, at least for now. I'm not going to be pessimist saying life is not there. Life might be possible elsewhere. How many of us can be able to afford access to it will be also another question, right? So if we have only one limited Earth, and that's also is termed as a blue planet, I'm talking from the sustainable angle, ecological angle. So one blue planet, and the name blue because life is possible here. Elsewhere, not possible still. They are trying to incubate, but it's taking a lot of resource and energy, and it's going to be distant, some distant dream or reality. So the question comes, when you do not have, and how much are you using? What is your economic development suggest? Economic development suggests we have already used up, we are in a deficit budget, 2.5 worth of Earth's resource. So we are already into debt ecologically. It's only a different thing that the Earth has not come and give us a notice, but it is giving notice in different means and ways and its own expression, right? So here I leave that all of us to think, and if possible at individual level, community level, let's make, and like we had adopted very, very successfully the whole environmental education awareness, we may adopt the second level of sustainable education and the sustainability as the way of life and approach. Thank you so much. And I hope I have been able to, put across my ideas and thoughts. I'll be happy to, take any questions and queries if you may have. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am. So participant, any questions, query from your side, you can ask. Dr. Mohammed Salim. Go to, you can unmute yourself. Let me do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
Is my audible?
Yeah. I request participant, please introduce yourself and then ask question. Over to you.
I, Dr. Muhammad Salim, School of Law, Presidency, University, Bangalore.
Okay.
Ma'am, my question is that you are deliberating that the who are seeking the sustainable development, they are against the development. We have seen the current monsoon season that there is a so disaster due to the landslides, etc., the heavy rain, the and others. There are so many causes. Also, as you have also stated, the climate change, the rising of the sea water also is continuing. That is a very dangerous on the stage. So how you will be contempt on this point that the sustainable development is against the development? The development should be according to the sustainability and the need of the surrounding situations. That will be my opinion.
Ha. Uh, Salim ji, I understood. Maybe my communication was not that clear. To start, before I gave you the definition of sustainable development, I was actually questioning and I was also giving you the various interpretations or expressions which are used. Some people suggest it is anti development. If you talk about sustainable development, it is anti. You are going to stop. Suppose, let's say, this is what happened. Like, we have proposed a dam. We question, why are you building the dam? Who would get benefit for the dam? Is the dam structure and design is safe? How much impact will it have in the local ecology? Another receiving end of the whole hydropower development was in India, that we
Oh,
ended up.
yes, ma'am. Yeah, yes, we understand, ma'am, as to the structure and the policy as the design. But as you seen in the Uttarakhand, the Uttarkasi is the merge of their rehabilitation due to the one mega project, which is the ideal project, which is developed in the recent time. But it is not a newly project; it was very earlier planned. But as to the Himalayan region, the sensitive region, which is a very high sensitivity and seismic region in the northern India, so that is the great challenge to the humanity to displace the thousands of persons for the building of a one project, and that it will affect to the large number that life of not only the humans, the animals life, the wildlife, and so it else. So that what should be your opinion on that point, that we can have a draw the policies, the sketch or the design that it will be sustainable to all, as we are also facing the China is building a so large dam that has changed the gravity of the earth. That is also the some Google news. I am not verified the person is the geologist, but that is we are hearing.
Yes, thank you so much for you a lot of, inputs and insights and thoughts. See, that's what, question is, when you are building a dam, of course it is important for us to build, because we have learned, this is like a technological innovation. We have learned that there are water bodies, and then you can actually capture that, build a dam, then regulate the flow according to your needs, right? At the same time, if it is at a, you can create the infrastructure, or naturally also there are such where the water is from a higher, you can have, hydel power project, and you can have turbines and produce hydel electricity. Fine, this was an innovation. It was supposed to give a certain amount of benefit. But when we started building mega and huge dams, uh, if we are not careful of, there might be, on one hand it would offer us certain benefits, on the other hand it may also offer us a lot of, like I told you, growth spills, adverse impacts. Now us as a human, if we are supposed to be wise and intelligent, we need to adopt a design or an approach, and the choice between mega dams and a smaller, that let us build a smaller one which are more manageable for that. It was a case where, because of these dams, they need to maintain certain amount of water, the entire flow of the river was getting impacted, and they were drying, and some of them are perennial. Perennial is not seasonal, they are seasonal. Sorry, they are not perennial, they are seasonal. So if you don't maintain a certain level of water, they were drying up. These are natural systems. So when you are then coming to the, where are you building it? Most of us know that Himalaya is under a huge geological, constant, there's a process. So lower Himalaya is a very transiting zone. It's a very volatile zone. There are still growth is going on. And in that region, they are bound to be, they are seismologically prone areas. Now here, if you need to have a design and a dam, it must be so good in its design, it can withstand the tremors or earthquakes. But it is argued that neither Tehri nor most of our dam will not be able to change or stand the any kind of seismological, and it's bound to happen. So which means most of the dams which we have built, only looking at the need of the present, not thinking of the safety and the future and the ecology and the surroundings. So in fact, Tehri is a classical case. What happened is, who needs the electricity? So it is a Delhi NCR which needs the electricity. The hills do not. You have less and very sparse population. So the NCR Delhi needs the water. So you're building a dam on Tehri, and this dam was so huge that it actually submerged the old Tehri town. So it was an entire anthropological cultural loss which happened there. But at that cost, we built and we established a new Tehri town. People were pushed. Some people were not ready to leave. That's their land. They have the people, their life, their history, culture, forefathers, so much of attachment, rights. What about the community rights? Rights of commons? No. And they were pushed to another place called New Tehri, where there was hardly any facility. It just went on. So sustainability says, we need to choose our options carefully, think of designs carefully, and can we minimize? It is
Sorry,
not
to interrupt. That is not the concept against the sustainability, but we think that is the policy, wrong policy decision. That the millions of the people, just like in the Narmada, we have also seen the rising of the level of the dam. It has displaced the millions of the people and affected the large number also, because so that is the not a sustainability is a progressive development, I think. But I think that is the policy decision should be very wise, that it must not affect the human life firstly as the human. If we are human, then there is a sustainability of the life. Otherwise, in the policy document, we find so many flaws. There are always dooms and domes. So that become issues for the general peoples who are not savior about the development also, but we are getting the development because electricity is the most important element as a energy. But the new renewable energy, which is a current source, the government is emphasizing on the solar energy, etc. That may be an alternative option against these high dam projects. And the last one question in continuing, if you allow me, that always in the summer the Delhi, NCR or every mega city is facing the paucity of the waters, the drinking water also. That there is a no remedies. The large development has affected the thousands and millions of the life daily in the summer seasons, specifically Delhi. Currently, I am in Bangalore. The last 1 year, we have seen the worst situation. So, what should a policy maker you suggest on that points?
See, that's where the problem lies. We think it is a policymaker's job to bring policy. Each of us can be, do intervention and bring change and do something. See, please understand, our whole system of governance, understanding approach is always a top-down approach, which is not working anymore. So therefore, there needs to be a bottom-up approach. If you see now, a lot of local activist groups, organizations, if you look at, there's somebody called who is known as a port man of India. He's just going and recovering lake. Bangalore, I myself have been there, 4.5 years, 98, 2001, I'm talking about. We could walk peacefully in that city, and it was known as, pensioners paradise, and it was known for, garden city. Today you go to Bangalore, it has lost the charm. So when IT revolution took place and we decided that to be the Silicon Valley of India, we did not thought this revolution and change will bring what kind of stress on the ecology and the surrounding or the Bangalore as a ecological, space. So X population moves into Bangalore. I have never heard anybody, any IT person who has gone Bangalore to study IT has come out of Bangalore. They were either there, or they have to be in Pune, or they have to be in Hyderabad, or Gurugram is the next destination. Now this, growth, which are very centric and highly concentrated on each urban areas, is what is causing problem. And there is a mass migration, So Delhi, when you cited, yes, because look at, do we have idea what is the population of our cities? Versus can we have taken a, contrast, what is the space? I'll give you a very interesting example. Some of the countries, when you travel, especially I had occasion of traveling for a family visit, went to Germany, and how the process of visa says, what are the requirements? The people whose house I'll go, they will have to seek a municipality prior permission saying, 4 people will come to my house, I have sufficient space, I have bank balance to feed them, and they would stay in my house, please permit. Once that permission letter comes from the local municipality, we will then take that and apply for a visa. And that too, visa is a visiting visa, visitor's visa, and showing both, this is my ticket to go and come, assurance I'm going to come back with my insurance. Imagine the restrictions. Why? Now it doesn't feel good. You don't feel like then visiting, but they are intelligently managing between their space and resource and environment. Today, I feel always say, I don't think ever we will know what is our total population. And you know why? Because a lot of, we are Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, so a lot of China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, everybody lives in India. So we are also living globally. I'm not going to deny that. Yes, I know. We are also living all over, one of the largest nationals in globally living. Fine. But this puts a lot of stress. So when Delhi is over this, even Ahmedabad, living in Ahmedabad, I sometimes still visit part of cities which I said, which part of the city is this? And I feel, have I reached Gandhinagar or have I reached Borough? So, they are integrating. There is no limits of growth. There was another piece of writing, please go and check out. The title of the writing was Limits of Growth. It's a high time we need to check how are we growing, what is our growth pattern, how much can we grow. All of us look at how are we buying our real estate development. Most of us are buying house not because we need house, it is an investment. You want tax benefit. If you start questioning and says we don't need, earlier my childhood has gone into a household where 3 generations lived, and it was complete, what I would say, Indian way, paisa vasool. But today everybody has house and more, and 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles. Obviously it's going to be very fast consumption. The pattern of development and consumption is causing problem. And then saying the policymaker will do what, and nobody is going to do anything. Top down approach is not going to work. It has to, therefore we have to be educated. Each of us have to be educated. Each of us have to be participating. Each of us have to practice, adopt in a smaller, even family, 1 in 2, 4 or 3 family starts being multiplying. It will have a better impact than your government bringing legislation policy. At least I am not favorable for policy change. It doesn't.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Next question, from NK Triveni, sorry.
Yes. Yes. Ma'am, I'm working as assistant professor in Government Law College, Madurai. I want to clarify a basic question that we are so lot of time we are talking about climate change. The basic term, the term climate change, is it indicating the total environmental crisis or only a part or some of the areas of environmental crisis? That I need clarification from you.
Thank you. And I would say interesting question. Observation was very interesting how you observed. Yes, we have global environmental crisis. When we look at 70s, we were only meaning our nomenclature and idea was only pollution. Today we have shifted ahead. Then we called greenhouse, carbon emission. Today we are talking about climate change. So there is a progression. Climate change is one of the ecological challenges that we are having today. So it is not the environmental problem as such. It is one of them. And that is clubbed along with pollution. And they all have, and unfortunately or fortunately, or that is by default design, environment is a very integrated system. So what you're doing in your land is affecting your airspace. The airspace is affecting your water system and in turn us. So it is one facet of one dimension of the whole ecological crisis that we are facing. I would suggest that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. But by what are the crises particularly, ma'am? But how it affects, what is the collective meaning? I could understand from your answer. But what are the crises we can indicate? We can specify that it is a climate change. Can you give an example, ma'am?
For climate change, what do you want?
Yes.
Okay. See, climate change basically, if you see, it is like I told, it is supposed to be a dynamic factor. It's a natural phenomena. But today what we are seeing, there is a fluctuations. And when we studied this fluctuation, our parameters were on a timeline, what we looked at, the temperature as one element. So there is definitely a rise. And the rise is very average normal. I think all of us have, brought up with 3 very distinct seasons. Today, especially if I talk about the Western India, I'm coming from Ahmedabad. So I lightly, jokingly say there is 9 months of summer. That's a constant weather.
Then I understand. Yes,
right. Second is factor is precipitation or rainfall. How is your rainfall? Because these are the parameters of your climate, which defines the climate to be good, bad, cold, warm. Right. That's a second parameter. Right.
Okay. And then the effect of that is the result. Climate change is the adverse effect of climate change is the result of environmental degradation. I could understand from you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Sure,
thank you.
Sure. It has added more fire to the fuel, fuel to the fire. Sorry.
Fuel to the fire. Thank you. Thank you very much. The basic doubt I had that you have got I have got clarified with you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question, participants? Yes, Manjula.
Good evening, ma'am. Parna Mukherjee. Ma'am, I have a small observation. Don't you think the sustainability concept is directly proportional? I mean, this concept is relied on the natural resources, we the population. Because see, population exponentially growing and population explosion is there, but the natural resources.
Lost her, I think.
Hello, can I speak?
Huh.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Manjula. See, I feel like, whatever policy makers are, devising the policies, lawmakers are, giving law enactments have been done, many. But I feel, see, humanity or mankind is dependent on the natural resources. These natural resources cannot be, increased or, the way the population exponentially growing. So is it the responsibility of the people or the population to be more sustainable in their actions towards the natural resources? It's not the other way around. Like we've been commenting on many developmental projects, like one gentleman has talked about Narmada, etc., etc. So if we are concentrating, if we concentrate on the population explosion, don't you think majorly this sustainability concept can be achieved? I mean, I need your opinion on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Manjula.
Yeah.
See, I would say you are very right in pinpointing, because there is a cause and effect, phenomena here. Everything that we say as a crisis, and we must think if this is an effect or cause. So if we
Yeah.
are able to pinpoint, that will help us to trace the solution and think how do we come out and what options and how do we make a transition from here. Now, of course, resources are something, most of the things which you see, very interestingly, none of the resources which we call the word natural resource, everything came free.
Yeah.
Like take water. It was a free natural commodity given as a gift of nature to mankind. We never thought it's going to be less
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
scarce. Today it
Yes.
is. Now question is, how do we consumed it? Did we consume in the wrong way or right way? How are we utilizing? How are we managing it as a resource? And then also look at what is the nature of the resource. Is
Yeah.
it something which is renewable? Is it non-renewable? It is
Yes.
renewable. It can. But if it is not, the pace of renewability is also has a limit. So
Exactly.
Earth, there's another interesting concept called the geocapacity of Earth. It is unfortunate that we don't understand. The Earth may have a infinite, not a infinite, but a very finite,
Finite.
capacity. Yes. So the
Yes.
population explosion has just exploded. Why? Because you thought that is another resource. Humans were also resource in this growth history or trajectory. We also were one. And sometimes when you look at the gender part, that's also interesting. When you see some of the sociologists, they argue the whole concept of gender is also not to bring equality but also inequality. Why? Because if you want the men to work 8 hours, let the women, and so equality was one thing which could bring more workforce. Today, you know how Bangalore is now rising up again, 14 hours of work. You have women also
Yes.
working in that force. So sometimes, how we want to do something, what we want to achieve, are we doing it from the only the monetary benefit point of view? Are we only trying to do it looking at today's need and all? That's what would decide where are we going to reach. So it is
Exactly.
something that you have a golden goose laying golden eggs. You can't wait every day one fine day you cut chop and say let's take all out, and you saw nothing is there inside. So
Exactly.
it's that story. It's that story.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any last question? Otherwise, I'll ask. I have a couple of questions. Yeah. Yes. Any last question, participants? I hope it's a time for tea for some participant. Yes, please. Anyone? So, madam, any input on like course curriculum? What should be the pedagogy, course content that you are offered, especially like environment law? What extent we should focus on, this our course content in LLB, UG, PG program, and maybe other courses also, other discipline also. So, any thought on?
See, when it comes to curriculum, we will have to also look at, we can have a basic, curriculum, and then according to, depending on where are we, so the faculty or the area we are operating, we may make little changes. For example, if you are now dealing with, let's say, I would bring an interesting here input. When I was doing my master's LLM, my teacher came and said there is something called e-waste. We were just, heard that word e-waste, and that interesting something new, we started looking into it. So we were checking the awareness level. Now, suppose you have to teach people about this thing called e-waste. Today, it is a full-fledged problem beyond, our capacity of management. That's the growth spill of your IT revolution. We never looked at it. We only thought it's going to be a forward motion without thinking there are more backward motions which are also going to generate side by side. So when you have to now teach awareness, now if I have to create that awareness for an engineering student versus a legal student versus another, so you can design pedagogy something which can be, general to all fundamental concepts, and then depending on the discipline, where the discipline can adopt sustainability, it can be tweaked accordingly also. So if we are working with the medical field, can they be the medical operations, the medical industry, health industry, can they operate sustainably? Technology, can the technology operate? We had a very interesting once a design of a course called Law for Engineers. Do engineers need law? So it's that kind of, you have to do disciplines and little bit of integration you have to do. So you can have certain basic components which will give idea about environment, challenges, sustainability, ways and means of approaching. But there has to be, for no doubt, a very diverse and interdisciplinary approach in bringing or designing this kind of curriculum.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful session. And again, 2-3 important point I would say related to, like, you should not be the top-down approach, right? We can start something, doing some, from our side, whatever we can do with the available resources. Recently, I was at Ahmedabad in the Gujarat Changemaker Summit. So one of the participants, like, who are doing something, in that. So one participant, like, it's not participant, I would say it's a change maker. It was summit, so all change maker from Gujarat they came. So I was also part of that. So one, like, they're using the used clothes. So he used, like, we are using thousands of liter water. I don't remember exact right now. So for the one denim jeans. So that was, like, remarkable. We just use for a few months, we just throw it out. How, what we can do in this regard. So that is very eye opener. And then other also change makers were there, like, so that way, like, you have to just identify things from your side. In few months back, like in one of the law teachers, India level, another law teachers group we have. So there was a debate. It went for a couple of days, like using water bottle in our programs. We use so many bottles, especially this 25 ml. It's a nuisance, I would say, from my side, because it's really we use, and then people keep in this meeting also.
Kalpesh,
Sorry.
I'll just intervene and say we call it, from environment and sustainability point, we call it a catch-22 solution. You wanted to conserve water, so you bring the sizes of the bottle small. Now me, who could have managed with a 1 liter bottle, now are going to take 6 to 4 bottles whole day. So we have reduced the water conservation, conserve the water, reduce the wastage of water, but increase the plastic. So these are not sustainable solution. These are not completely sustainable solution.
Yeah. And the organizer, they has to ask, please, whenever you're using this bottle, at least don't, leave it. Participant, please mute your mic. So organizer requested, if you're using water, please take it with you. You don't know, it's there like 25 ml water. Still, you're taking 2 ship, 3 ships and just putting. So again, like, it like, at least you can use it. There is a, refill, you can do it, refill from outside. Otherwise, bottles are available. It's from our side. Still, people were there, like they were not bothering, right? And then they were taking throughout 2 days, keep, that way, keep using that 250 ml bottle, and you can imagine for 2 days. So, so many things. Everybody's culprit. Everybody's culprit.
Like law, most of it is all behavioral and perception problem. If you change behavior and perception, a lot of change will happen. Lot of change will happen.
So, like, definitely, like, everybody's culprit, right? All of you have been attending, and I am also culprit. Like, but we can try. I know I keep asking whenever my wife goes, maybe yesterday I asked my son to get pani puri. So he, like, I told him, भाई bag लेके क्यों नहीं गया था? I really blasted. 4 plastic नहीं, एक में आलू है. So I really, like, this is small thing. मैं कहीं से आ रहा हूँ, I am coming from outside, that is fine. You can I get something, but there is no polythene is available. But that we can do it. That I try and then sometimes get angry also. It at least follow these things. Pani ka hai, anything. And then entrepreneurship, madam rightly stated, we can have some solutions related to this, wastage. I will take 1 minute. Sorry for I am started giving lecture lecture. So that sachet of this milk pouch, like small thing, and then it's like so few days back. I think you might have also seen how that sachet small thing that cut being used to re-waste. Sorry, that waste is being used for that
So I
recycling.
have now I improved. I have stopped chopping that small little corner. Now I make a longer cut to see that it is not completely separated. I learned it through someone. It's interesting. We can.
True. It's very difficult to like pick those small stuff. So that will be like,
They
and then
cannot be disposed. They cannot be disposed. Smaller parts cannot be.
yeah,
Go into the land.
land, and then it go haywire. Like yeah. Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your valuable time. Again, it was very hectic, 2 hours constantly. Again, this time, obviously, you can understand. So, I'm grateful for your insightful session. I hope participants learn the insight from today's session on equality, equity, and then how we can do something from your side, and then curriculum part also that we have to think as a teacher and the students also, and obviously as an entrepreneur also. And then you rightly stated my interdisciplinary thing, how we can like law and then management and then come up with some good solutions. So something can happen in direction. So thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, look forward to see you in future events. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, participant, for joining. We'll see you tomorrow at same time. Thank you.
Thank you, one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.